2 weeks earlier, my wife had driven down to Orlando to visit our daughter and son-in-law. I'd told her I couldn't make the trip, then changed my mind and decided to surprise them. I imagined pulling into their driveway with flowers, walking up to the door, seeing the look on her face when she opened it. I didn't imagine a stranger shouting at me from across the street, or the police sirens that followed minutes later. The highway stretched ahead like a sentence I couldn't finish. I'd driven this route dozens of times through the years, but that morning every mile felt heavier, longer. The steering wheel was slick beneath my palms. I gripped it tighter than necessary until the skin around my knuckles turned white. The phone sat dead in the cup holder, its black screen mocking me with silence. 3 days. Vivian had never gone 3 full days without answering. I glanced again, even though I knew there'd be nothing new. No reply, no missed call, only the same string of unanswered texts and voicemails. The last message I'd left that morning sounded almost frantic. "Viv, I'm worried. Just let me know you're okay. Call me back, please." Yesterday, the plan had seemed harmless. Drive to Orlando, surprise them, take them to lunch. But somewhere past mile marker 68, the surprise began to feel like something else. An instinct, a warning that wouldn't quiet down. Exit signs ticked down the distance. 40 miles to Orlando, then 35, then 30. My mind drifted back to the weeks before Vivian left. Della's phone calls had changed. Not in how often she called. She'd always been good about checking in. But in what she talked about. Every conversation somehow wound its way to money. The roof leaking, Curtis's work slowing down. "Could you help with the mortgage just this month?" Then came questions that left me uneasy. "Dad, have you and Mom updated your will lately? Property values are different now." I'd mentioned it to Vivian that night. She was folding laundry, moving with the calm precision that had always anchored me. "She's our daughter Otis," she said without looking up. "She's just under pressure. We've had rough patches too. Remember?" I remembered, but something about Della's tone had stuck with me. Calculated, maybe rehearsed, or maybe, I told myself, I was just turning cynical in my old age, seeing darkness where there was only ordinary struggle. The Orlando exit appeared. I merged right, following the ramp into the web of suburban streets. Strip malls and gas stations gave way to neat rows of 2-story houses. Lawns trimmed into identical green rectangles. Della's neighborhood looked picture perfect. Driveways clear, mailboxes polished, kids' bicycles leaning against garage doors. Her house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac. The grass had been freshly cut, crisp stripes across the yard. No newspapers on the driveway, no sign of neglect. Everything looked ordinary, and that in itself unsettled me. I parked at the curb, killed the engine, and sat there a moment. Maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe Vivian had dropped her phone in the pool, or left it uncharged while spending time with our daughter. There had to be a simple explanation. There always is, until there isn't. I got out, walked the path to the porch, and pressed the doorbell. The chime echoed faintly inside. I counted to 30, no footsteps, no sound, pressed it again, nothing. I tried the handle, locked, then cut my hands against the glass to peer inside. The living room looked untouched since Christmas. Furniture perfectly arranged, cushions undisturbed. No light, no motion. I dialed Della's number. 4 rings. Voicemail. Her bright recorded voice. "Hey, it's Della. Leave a message and I'll call right back." I didn't bother leaving one. Called Curtis. Same result, only his voice was clipped and professional. "Curtis Richards. Leave your name and number." The unease that had shadowed me since Tampa hardened into dread. Then a voice behind me. "Excuse me. Wait." I turned. A man was hurrying across the lawn from next door, middle-aged, thinning hair, polo shirt tucked neatly into khakis. His pace was urgent enough to make the scene feel wrong. "Are you family?" he called out. "Are you Vivian's husband?" The question hit like a jolt. Yes, why? He reached me, extending a hand automatically, though his mind was elsewhere. "Robert Delaney, I live next door." He gestured toward his house, then back at Della's. "I need to tell you something. About a week ago, something happened here." His jaw worked as though the words were hard to get out. "There were screams," he said finally. "Late at night, a woman's voice." My stomach tightened. It was around midnight, maybe a little after. He went on. "June 8th. I remember because it was the night before my daughter's birthday. I heard screaming from this house. Not yelling, screaming. Someone begging for help. Begging for an ambulance." He hesitated, eyes flicking toward the front windows. I got up, looked out, and saw Della and Curtis come outside. They were yelling that everything was fine, that it was just a nightmare. But it wasn't. You don't mistake that kind of sound. What did you do? I managed. I called 911. They saw me through the window, tried to wave me off, but I made the call anyway. Paramedics came maybe 10 minutes later. Went inside with Della and Curtis. When they came back out, they had a woman on a stretcher. She could barely move. His voice dropped. It was your wife. The world narrowed to his words. She was barely conscious, he said. The medics were checking vitals, asking questions. Your daughter and her husband just stood there. Didn't follow the ambulance. Next morning, both cars were gone. Haven't seen them since. I stared at him, hands trembling. Which hospital? I don't know. I assumed family would be contacted. I fumbled for my phone, called emergency services, forced my voice steady as I gave the address. The dispatcher checked records. Yes, sir. Ambulance dispatched June 8th at 12:43 a.m. Patient name, Vivian Morgan. Transported to Orlando Regional Medical Center. I thanked her, hung up, and dialed the hospital. After 3 transfers and a long hold underscored by tinny music, a nurse answered from the ICU. Yes, Mrs. Morgan was admitted June 8th. Serious condition, but stable as of yesterday. What happened? I'm sorry, sir. I can't release details over the phone. You'll need to come in person. Ask for the charge nurse on the 4th floor. I ended the call, looked at Robert. I'm calling the police, I said. He nodded instantly. I'll give a statement, whatever you need. I phoned the Orlando Police Department, reported what the neighbor had witnessed, and was told an officer would meet me at the hospital. Then I got into the car and drove. Traffic lights blurred past, meaningless colors. People walked dogs, carried groceries, existed inside their calm, ordinary Tuesdays, while my world cracked in half. Why hadn't Della called for help? Why leave her mother like that? At the hospital, fluorescent light pooled on polished floors. A woman in plain clothes waited near the nurse's station, badge clipped to her belt. Mr. Morgan? Detective Lisa Thornton, Orlando PD. She offered a firm handshake. I got the report. Let's talk. Where is my wife? Room 412. But before you see her, I need a few answers. We sat in a small consultation room that smelled faintly of antiseptic. She took notes as I explained everything. The missed calls, the neighbor's story, the trip from Tampa. When I finished, she looked up, expression careful. Mr. Morgan, your wife was admitted with severe poisoning, a combination of sedatives and cardiac medication. The doses were nearly fatal. The words struck like physical blows. She's been unconscious most of the week, the detective continued. We've been trying to identify next of kin. My daughter and her husband were with her, I said slowly. The neighbor heard her screaming. They told him it was nothing. Then they left. Does that sound like an accident to you? Thornton's mouth tightened. Go see your wife. We'll talk after. I entered the ICU. Machines pulsed rhythmically beside the bed. Vivian looked impossibly small against the white sheets. Skin nearly translucent, lips colorless. Tubes trailed from her arms. Monitors tracked every breath. I pulled a chair close and took her hand. It felt fragile, weightless. I'm here now, I whispered. When you wake up, you'll tell me what happened. I promise they'll never hurt you again. I stayed the night beside her. Nurses offered a cot in the waiting area, even a voucher for a nearby hotel, but I refused. My place was there. Around 5 in the morning, her fingers twitched. I leaned forward. Her eyelids fluttered open, pupils struggling to focus. Then they found me. Otis, she rasped, the sound rough from the ventilator tube. Where? You're in the hospital. You've been here a week, her brow furrowed. A week? I nodded. Detective Thornton appeared with a small recorder. If you feel strong enough, Mrs. Morgan, can you tell me what you remember? Vivian's voice was weak but steady. Della made dinner that night. Pasta, garlic bread. About an hour later, I felt dizzy. Sick. My heart started racing. I told Della to call an ambulance. She said it was food poisoning, told me to lie down, but it got worse. I couldn't breathe. I begged her. I said, Della, please, something's wrong with my heart. She just looked at Curtis. He stood in front of the door, wouldn't let me out. She swallowed hard. I screamed for help. I thought maybe someone outside would hear. Then everything went dark. Thornton stopped the recorder. The toxicology confirms what you've described, she said. High levels of zolpidem and digoxin. These aren't random. Whoever gave them to you knew exactly what they'd do. Vivian closed her eyes, whispering. They had pill bottles in their bathroom. Curtis said they were for anxiety and sleep. I didn't think. Thornton nodded, scribbling. We'll need formal statements, but this is enough to move forward. Your daughter and son-in-law returned to Orlando yesterday. We'll be questioning them. They're not suspects, I said quietly. They're perpetrators. The detective met my gaze. Then we'll prove it. Detective Thornton left the room to coordinate with hospital security and evidence technicians, leaving me beside Vivian's bed. I sat there for hours, watching the monitor's pulse, counting each rise and fall of her chest as if sheer will could keep her alive. By mid-afternoon the next day, she was stable enough for brief conversation, though the sedatives left her drifting in and out. Each time she opened her eyes, she found me and whispered the same word. Why? I had no answer, only the echo of my own anger pulsing like a second heartbeat. When Detective Thornton returned that evening, she carried a folder thick with preliminary reports. Mr. Morgan, she said, pulling up a chair, we've located your daughter and her husband. They're back at their residence in Orlando. We'll bring them in tomorrow morning for formal questioning. Are they under arrest? I asked. Not yet. We need to build the record carefully, but what your wife told us, combined with the neighbor's statement, gives us probable cause to treat this as an attempted murder investigation. I nodded. Do it right, I said. I don't want technicalities ruining this. Thornton gave a faint smile, the kind prosecutors and detectives share when they recognize one another's discipline. Understood. I drove back to Tampa that night for a change of clothes and a shower that did little to scrub away exhaustion. The next morning, I returned to Orlando in time to meet Thornton outside the precinct. She led me to a small observation room with a one-way mirror. Through the glass, Della and Curtis sat across from separate detectives. Della looked immaculate, hair pulled into a tidy bun, blouse pressed, a look that belonged more to Sunday brunch than a police station. Curtis appeared rumpled, his eyes darting toward her every few seconds as if waiting for silent cues. Thornton folded her arms, watching. They came voluntarily, she said. That won't last long. Inside the room, I watched the interrogation unfold. The detectives began gently, confirming times and dates. Della's voice was smooth, even sympathetic. Mom wasn't feeling well, she said. She'd been under stress. We thought she'd taken something on her own. We were going to call for help when the neighbor panicked. Curtis nodded along like a rehearsed actor. Every word was too measured, too neat. When the questioning turned to medication, who owned which prescriptions, Della's composure flickered. Curtis spoke up too quickly. Those were mine. For anxiety. She must have found them. Thornton leaned closer to the glass. See that? The first crack. He's nervous. 2 hours later, they were released, still free, but no longer comfortable. Thornton exhaled slowly. We'll get them. But I need hard evidence. Financial, digital, anything that ties intent to opportunity. Then let me help, I said. I know where to look. By Friday, I'd contacted Marcus Webb. We met at a small cafe on Kennedy Boulevard, the same place we'd planned cases over coffee 20 years earlier. Age had silvered his hair, but not dulled his precision. I read the initial police summary, he said, sliding a legal pad between us. You think this was premeditated? I know it was. They needed money. They knew their inheritance was the only way out. He nodded once, businesslike. Give me 72 hours. 2 days later, Marcus called before dawn. Otis, you'll want to see this in person. At the cafe again, he laid 3 folders on the table. Your daughter made 47 calls to creditors over the last 3 months, he said. Credit cards, mortgage companies, loan collectors. Everything's late. Curtis owes 85 grand on cards, another 120 in gambling debts. Foreclosure proceedings started last week. He turned another page. And 4 weeks before the poisoning, Della called your estate attorney asking about probate timelines. What happens if a parent dies without a will? Whether children automatically inherit. She phrased it like casual curiosity. I stared at the printed phone record, the timestamp circled in red. June 10th, I murmured. 2 days after Vivian collapsed. That's not curiosity, Marcus said. That's calculation. I felt the prosecutor's instincts slot each fact into place. Motive, preparation, act, concealment. The pattern was perfect. Too perfect to ignore. That afternoon, I drove to the downtown office of James Walker, an old colleague turned civil litigation specialist. His office overlooked Tampa Bay, sunlight flashing off sailboats beyond the glass. Walker skimmed Marcus's report, his eyes narrowing. Criminal court will take time, he said finally, but civil litigation moves faster. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt isn't required. just preponderance of evidence. 51%. I don't care about money, I said. I care about exposure. He smiled faintly. Then we'll sue them for every cent they have. Wrongful injury, emotional distress, medical costs. We'll freeze their assets so they can't hide anything. Civil discovery will dig deeper than police warrants. Do it, I said. I'll draft papers by end of day. That evening I visited Gerald Simmons, our estate attorney. His office smelled of old leather and cedar polish. I need changes, I told him. Remove Della from the will completely. Everything goes to Vivian. And if she predeceases me, to charity. Add a no contest clause. If Della challenges it, she forfeits everything. Simmons looked up, brows lifted. I assume this relates to the ongoing matter. It relates to survival, I said flatly. I'll sign tonight, he didn't argue. Within the hour, the new documents were drafted, witnessed, sealed. When I returned home, Vivian was waiting in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, though the Florida air was heavy with heat. She'd been discharged that afternoon, fragile but lucid. I told her everything. Marcus's findings, the will, Walker's plan. She listened in silence, eyes tracing the edges of the folder without opening it. She called about the will, she said at last, voice low. Before I even got sick. She did. Vivian's hands trembled slightly. I kept saying she was just struggling, that she'd never. I was wrong. I sat beside her, careful not to touch without invitation. You weren't wrong to love your daughter, I said. She was wrong to betray it. We sat like that for a long time, the quiet between us thick and living. Then Vivian straightened, resolve replacing sorrow. What's the next step? I told her. Civil filings, asset freezes, coordination with Detective Thornton. She nodded once. Do it. Friday morning I dialed Della's number. She answered on the second ring, her tone practiced and bright. Dad, how's Mom doing? I've been so worried. Your mother needs family right now, I said evenly. We should all talk, face to face. Can you and Curtis come to Tampa this weekend? A pause, the faint sound of her weighing options. Of course, she said finally. We want to help however we can. Saturday noon. Perfect. After hanging up, I called Walker. File the suit first thing Monday. He hesitated. Once they're served, there's no going back. I don't plan on going back. By that afternoon, the complaint was printed and ready. 38 pages of allegations, medical documentation, and itemized damages totaling $2 million. Attempted murder, emotional distress, medical expenses, every line supported by evidence. Walker's voice came through speakerphone. We'll file within the hour. You're certain? File it. Understood. I imagined the process server knocking at Della's door, the envelope changing hands, her eyes scanning the first page, seeing the words attempted murder in bold type. The satisfaction I felt wasn't joy, it was precision, the clean alignment of cause and consequence. 3 hours later, my phone rang. Not Walker, Della. I let it buzz twice before answering. $2 million, she shrieked the moment the line connected. Dad, have you lost your mind? This is insane. Mom took those pills herself because she couldn't sleep. You're ruining our lives over a misunderstanding. I let her vent, cataloguing each sentence for later contradiction. We were trying to help her, she went on. She was anxious. She took too many pills, and that nosy neighbor called the police. You had a choice that night, I interrupted. My voice was calm, colder than I expected. When your mother begged for help, you could have called an ambulance. You didn't. Now you'll answer for that choice in court. Her tone flipped from hysteria to fury. You're destroying your own family. Family doesn't do this. Family doesn't poison their mother for money. I ended the call. 20 minutes later, the phone rang again. Curtis this time. His voice was smoother, rehearsed. Otis, listen. I know how this looks, but we can fix it. We're all adults here. Maybe there's a way to handle it privately. A settlement. No one needs to go through court. You're offering me money? I asked quietly. With what? The $85,000 you owe on credit cards. The $120,000 in gambling losses, or the inheritance you thought you'd collect when Vivian died. Silence. Then, incredulous. What are you talking about? There's no deal, Curtis. See you in court. I hung up. That evening, Detective Thornton called. We executed a search warrant at their house this morning, she said. Found an empty prescription bottle in their bathroom. Zolpidem, prescribed to Curtis 3 months ago. 30 pills. Empty. His prints all over it. My pen moved automatically, taking notes. That's not all, she added. His laptop shows browser searches from 3 weeks before the incident. Digoxin overdose symptoms, lethal sleeping pill dose. He researched exactly what happened to your wife before it happened. That's premeditation, Mr. Morgan, I exhaled slowly. Keep me updated. At 7 that night she called again. They're in custody, she said. Both arrested at home an hour ago. Attempted murder, conspiracy, obstruction. Bail hearing tomorrow morning. Vivian was beside me, listening on speaker. Her eyes filled but didn't spill. Is it wrong that I feel relieved? She whispered. No, I said. It means justice is doing its job. My phone buzzed again. A text from Walker. Arrest warrants executed. Civil case supported by criminal charges. Asset freeze hearing scheduled in 3 days. We're winning. Vivian looked toward the bookshelf where a framed photo stood. Della at 7, grinning gap-toothed on my shoulders at the beach. Slowly she turned it face down. I can't look at her right now, she murmured. Neither could I. The bail hearing took place Wednesday morning. Della and Curtis appeared via video from the county jail, both wearing orange jumpsuits that drained all pretense of dignity. The judge set bail at $250,000 each. High, but not unreachable. By Thursday afternoon, they'd posted bond, pledging their house as collateral. By Friday, they'd retained an attorney, Michael Brennan, a media-savvy former public defender known for twisting sympathy into strategy. By Saturday, the headlines began. Father sues daughter for attempted murder. Defense claims tragic accident. The article presented both sides neutrally, but the photo did not. Della, fragile and tear-streaked, clasping Curtis's hand. No mention of Vivian's condition. No photo of the machines that had kept her alive. Sunday brought the follow-up interview. Della and Curtis seated on their living room couch, speaking softly about the terrible misunderstanding tearing their family apart. I read it at the breakfast table while Vivian made coffee. Listen to this, I said. They claim you took the pills because you were worried about money. Vivian set the cup down too hard. They watched me beg for help. That's not a misunderstanding, I know. Then why does reading it make me feel like we're the ones doing something wrong? Because that's Brennan's tactic, I said. He's shaping the narrative before trial. Make the public doubt, make the jury doubt. Classic defense strategy. My phone began ringing that afternoon. Friends, colleagues, cautious voices layered with concern and disbelief. Richard Martinez, a retired judge, called first. Otis, I saw the paper. Obviously there are 2 sides to every story. Not to this one, I said. Still, he continued, family matters can blur judgment. Maybe emotions. Richard, they poisoned her. He went quiet. I'm sorry, he said finally, and hung up. Then Carol Henderson, a former victim advocate. I'm not questioning you, she said carefully, but trauma can distort memory. Maybe Vivian's recollection. She begged for help, I said. They refused. That's not distortion. By evening, I'd stopped answering calls altogether. Walker phoned Monday morning. Brennan just filed a countersuit, he said grimly. Defamation. They're claiming your accusations destroyed their reputations and business. Demanding $500,000, I laughed once without humor. That's absurd. It's harassment, Walker said, designed to rattle you, but combined with the media coverage, it muddies the water. We need to brace for it. He outlined the plan for Wednesday's asset freeze hearing. Demonstrate motive through financial records, prove risk of asset transfer, lock down everything they owned. Once the freeze is in place, he said, they can't pay lawyers, can't move money. They'll feel pressure fast. Good, I said. Let them. Tuesday afternoon, I went out for groceries. My first time stepping outside for something ordinary since the arrests. In the cereal aisle, I ran into Thomas Kirby, an old friend from my book club. He spotted me and hesitated, his cart half full. Otis, he said finally, voice low. How are you holding up? Managing, I answered. He nodded, eyes flicking away. I read about everything. Must be hard. Look, I don't want to overstep, but have you considered mediation? Sometimes family things. My daughter tried to kill my wife for money, I said, cutting him off. That's not a misunderstanding. Color rose in his cheeks. Of course not, the article made it sound more complicated than that. It was written by their lawyer, I said. Right. Sure, I hope it all works out. He left his cart where it was and hurried away. I watched him go, realizing how quickly sympathy evaporates when people have to choose sides. That night, Vivian found me at my desk, surrounded by files and evidence printouts. She sat down across from me, her expression steady despite the exhaustion etched into her face. "People are questioning you," she said quietly. "Some are," I admitted. "Do you doubt yourself?" I hesitated. "Sometimes. When enough people suggest you're wrong, you start wondering." Vivian's eyes hardened. "Then let me remind you of something. I begged our daughter for help while I was dying. She looked at me and refused. That's not confusion. That's not panic. That's intent. Don't let anyone make you forget that." Her certainty anchored me. Whatever doubts had crept in, they evaporated under her gaze. Wednesday morning, I was reviewing documents at the kitchen counter when my phone rang. "Detective Thornton." "Curtis cracked," she said without preamble. I straightened in my chair. "What do you mean?" "This morning's follow-up interview. I was pressing him on inconsistencies between his story and Della's, and he just broke. He said, and I quote, 'It was my idea to solve our financial problems, okay?' But Della agreed. She knew what we were doing." His attorney immediately demanded we stop, but it's on tape. I underlined the words on my legal pad. "My idea," Della agreed. "She knew." "That's conspiracy," I said. "And premeditation," Thornton replied. "Their defense just collapsed from the inside." When we hung up, I called James Walker. He already knew. "Thornton's team has it all recorded," he said. And according to my contacts at the DA's office, things got ugly afterward. Brennan pulled both of them into a private room to discuss damage control. Officers outside heard everything. Della screaming that Curtis was weak, calling him an idiot for confessing, and Curtis yelling back that she'd wanted the money just as much as he did. That she helped plan it. Walker paused, almost impressed. Two defendants blaming each other. That's a prosecutor's dream. "I know," I said. "I built half my career on that." By the next afternoon, Walker called again. "The DA's office wants to make a tactical move. They're offering Curtis a plea deal. Lesser charges in exchange for full testimony against Della. Conspiracy instead of attempted murder. 8 to 10 years instead of 20. "He's the weak point," I said. "Exactly. Addictive personality, poor impulse control. He'll take it." I looked out the window at the bright Tampa sky, remembering Vivian's voice trembling as she described him standing in front of the door while she begged for help. "Make the offer," I said. Walker exhaled. "I'll notify the DA." The next morning, the offer was delivered to Curtis through his attorney. According to Walker's contacts, Brennan fought against it, insisting they had to stand united, but Curtis was already unraveling. He asked for 48 hours to decide. While he deliberated, Della made her own move. She retained a new attorney, Patricia Vance, citing a conflict of interest. Brennan could no longer represent both. Vance immediately filed a motion claiming Della had been coerced by her husband, that Curtis was controlling and verbally abusive, that she was merely a frightened woman trapped in a toxic marriage. Walker called to brief me. "It's a weak defense given the evidence, but it tells us everything we need to know," he said. "She's ready to throw him to the wolves to save herself." "She's ruthless," I said. "She's desperate," Walker corrected, "and desperation makes people sloppy." That evening, Vivian and I sat together in the living room. I explained the developments, the plea offer, the new defense strategy. She listened, hands folded, face calm but pale. "If Curtis testifies against Della," she asked, "does that guarantee her conviction?" "Not guarantee," I said. "But combined with the laptop evidence, the forged prescriptions, your testimony, it's overwhelming." She nodded once. "Then I hope he takes the deal. Not to spare him, but to make sure she faces everything she deserves." Her words carried no bitterness, only a clear, cold resolve. Late that night, my phone rang again. Walker's number. His voice was tight with restrained excitement. "Curtis's attorney just called. He's taking the deal. Full cooperation. He'll testify to everything." Across the room, Vivian looked at me, question in her eyes. I mouthed the words. "He's testifying." She closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, then nodded. "It's really happening," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "It is." Monday morning, the court granted our motion to freeze Della and Curtis's assets. The hearing took less than 20 minutes. Judge Martinez reviewed the evidence, debt records, mortgage defaults, phone calls to the estate attorney, and signed the order. All bank accounts frozen, no property transfers permitted. "They're financially paralyzed," Walker told me afterward. "They can't sell, can't borrow, can't pay lawyers without permission. Everything they own is locked down until the case ends. Good, I said. Let them feel powerless. Curtis's deposition was scheduled for Friday. Walker advised me not to attend, to avoid complicating the process, so I waited at home while the DA's office and Walker conducted the session. That evening, Walker called. We got everything, he said. 47 pages of testimony. Curtis detailed how they planned it, how Della said they needed money, how she agreed poisoning her mother was the only way out. He admitted to mixing the drugs into the pasta sauce, forging a prescription pad for the digoxin, and deleting his search history afterward. He named Della as co-conspirator in every step. I gripped the edge of my desk. So there's no question anymore. None, Walker said. He even described the argument afterward, how she refused to call an ambulance. It's all corroborated by the laptop evidence and toxicology reports. That night, Detective Thornton called too. Based on Curtis's deposition, she said, the DA added new charges for Della. Conspiracy to commit murder and accessory after the fact. We've got a new arrest warrant. When? I asked. Tomorrow morning. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, Thornton texted just after sunrise. She's in custody. Bail denied. I showed the message to Vivian, who read it silently, then whispered, Good. The following Sunday brought an email from Della's new attorney. The subject line read, Confidential settlement discussion. I opened it and read each word slowly. Vance suggested that, in the interest of family healing, perhaps there was room for resolution. Della was willing to accept a lesser criminal charge, reckless endangerment, in exchange for dropping the civil suit. Families, the letter concluded, should seek reconciliation, not ruin. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then pressed delete. When Vivian found me still at my desk, she asked, What was that? Della's lawyer. She wants a deal. And what did you say? Nothing. I deleted it, Vivian nodded once. Good. She doesn't get to rewrite this. I took a screenshot of the email and forwarded it to Walker with one sentence. No deals. No compromise. Proceed on all charges. His reply came within minutes. Understood. Message delivered to DA. Della's counsel will get the point. With Della now facing upgraded charges, the civil case advanced in parallel. Walker filed additional motions, one seeking joint and several liability, ensuring Curtis remained responsible for the entire $2 million judgment even after his plea. Meanwhile, the bank accelerated foreclosure proceedings on their house. With mortgage payments 3 months overdue and assets frozen, they had nothing left. Marcus Webb called to confirm. They've been served a notice to vacate, he said. 30 days to move out. They gambled everything, I said quietly, and lost. Completely, Marcus replied. Curtis's formal plea hearing was held July 2nd. He stood before the judge, voice subdued but clear, admitting under oath to conspiracy to commit attempted murder. He described forging prescriptions, mixing medication into food, and watching as Vivian collapsed. He accepted an 8-year sentence. Vivian and I watched the recording later online. She said nothing for a long time afterward. Della's preliminary hearing was scheduled for July 10th. Based on Curtis's testimony and the mountain of evidence, Walker assured me it was only a formality. For the first time since her arrest, I'd have to see her again. On July 4th, we sat on our back porch, fireworks bursting over the bay. The sky shimmered in reds and golds, reflected in Vivian's glass of water. Are you ready for next week? She asked. For the hearing. I thought for a long time before answering. Yes, I said finally. I'm ready. The morning of July 6th. The local news broke the story nationwide. Daughter and son-in-law charged in mother's poisoning plot. Inheritance motive alleged. This time, the coverage was different. No, he said, she said, no false neutrality, just evidence. The anchor listed the forged prescriptions, the laptop searches, the debt, the inheritance plans. The video footage showed Della and Curtis being processed in court, orange jumpsuits stark under fluorescent light. My phone started buzzing, calls, messages, apologies from the same people who doubted me weeks before. I ignored them all. Marcus Webb called mid-morning with updates. The real estate agency cut ties with Della today, he said. Released a public statement condemning her actions and expressing sympathy for your wife. Curtis's employer terminated him yesterday for moral turpitude violations. He flipped a page in his notes. His parents issued a statement too. We are devastated by our son's actions and stand with the victims. I took it all in like court evidence, facts, not triumphs. They're isolated, I said. Completely, Marcus confirmed. No friends, no family, no income. 8 days after Della's second arrest, I found an envelope in the mailbox, addressed in her handwriting. Vivian saw it in my hand. From her? She asked. I nodded. We went inside. I opened it carefully at the kitchen table. 3 handwritten pages. Dad, it began. Please. I know what this looks like. I know what I did was wrong, but everything got out of control. The debts, the pressure, Curtis's gambling, it was too much. I never meant for Mom to die. I panicked. I'm so sorry. I love you both. Isn't there a way to fix this? Can't we be a family again? The rest was the same. Part confession. Part excuse. Part plea for forgiveness without accountability. I read it twice, searching for remorse and finding only manipulation. Then I slid the pages across the table. Vivian read silently. When she finished, she looked at me. What will you do? I got up, went to my desk, and wrote 1 page by hand. Della, you had a choice that night. You chose to let your mother suffer rather than call for help. You chose money over her life. Those were your decisions. There is no fixing this. There is no family to return to. All future communication goes through my attorney. Otis I sealed it and gave it to Walker's office for delivery. That afternoon, Walker called. Civil trial date set, July 15th. The judge wants quick resolution. Given the criminal convictions, it'll be a formality. What's the expected judgment? About $1.5 million plus legal fees. They'll never pay it, but it'll stand on record. That's enough, I said. It'll follow them forever. That evening, I sat alone in my study, reading through the final case file, medical bills, transcripts, bank statements, court orders. Behind me, the door opened softly. Vivian stood there, stronger now, the lines of pain replaced with quiet determination. The trial's in 5 days, she said. I nodded. Do you need me to testify? If you're up for it, she smiled faintly. If it helps hold them accountable, I'll do whatever's necessary. I reached for her hand, and she took it. The courthouse in downtown Orlando was already buzzing when we arrived for the civil trial. Reporters waited outside the marble steps, cameras poised, the humid air shimmering around them. We parked in the shaded lot and walked in through the side entrance, avoiding the crowd. Inside, the courtroom was quiet, sterile, almost too bright, the kind of place where truth was measured not by feeling, but by documentation and the weight of evidence. Vivian sat beside me, her posture calm, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She wore a soft grey dress, her hair pulled back, her face composed. James Walker leaned over from the next seat. They'll try to play sympathy, he murmured. Don't react to anything. Let me handle every word. I trust you, I said. At the front of the room, Della sat beside her new attorney, Patricia Vance. Her expression was carefully arranged, subdued, almost saintly. She looked thinner, her skin pale, but her eyes carried the same calculating sharpness that had always been there. Curtis was absent. His plea agreement barred him from attending any civil proceedings related to the case. When the judge entered, the room rose. The trial began. Walker started with a concise statement. The timeline of the poisoning, the financial records, Curtis's confession, the inheritance motive. He spoke without embellishment, every sentence backed by evidence. This is not speculation, he said. It is fact, corroborated by physical proof and sworn testimony. Vance countered with a performance. She spoke of a daughter overwhelmed by financial hardship, of a tragic accident misinterpreted as malice. Her tone dripped sincerity, but the cracks were visible. She had no explanation for the prescription forgery, no answer for the Google searches, no counter for Curtis's taped confession. Vivian was called to the stand first. The courtroom hushed as she walked forward. Her steps were slow but steady. She took the oath, sat down and folded her hands. Walker began gently. Mrs. Morgan, can you describe the night of June 8th? She inhaled, then spoke clearly, her voice carrying through the room. My daughter cooked dinner, pasta and garlic bread. I remember because she insisted on making it herself. After eating, I felt dizzy, then weak. My heart was racing. I told her I needed an ambulance. She told me it was nothing. I begged her. I said, Della, please, something's wrong. She looked at her husband and said I was overreacting. Then they both watched while I collapsed. There was a stillness after her words. Even Vance looked momentarily unsettled. Walker nodded. Did they call for help? No, Vivian said softly. A neighbor did. Do you believe they intended to harm you? Vivian looked directly at Della, her gaze unwavering. Yes, I do. Thank you, Mrs. Morgan. When she stepped down, I caught her hand as she passed. It trembled, but her expression never faltered. Walker called the next witnesses, the neighbor, Robert Delaney, Detective Thornton, the toxicologist who confirmed the drug levels. Each testimony aligned perfectly, every piece fitting into place. When the defense took its turn, Vance tried to undermine Curtis's credibility. He's a confessed criminal, she reminded the court. He'll say anything to save himself. But Walker was ready. Even if we disregarded his confession, he said, we still have his search history, his forged prescriptions, and your client's documented financial motive. The facts stand independent of his words. The judge nodded slightly. By the third day, the outcome was clear. Della's defense had collapsed under the weight of her own actions. In closing, Walker spoke with quiet precision. This case is not about revenge, he said. It is about accountability. It is about a mother who nearly died because her daughter valued inheritance over love. And it is about ensuring that such betrayal is not forgotten or excused. Vance's closing argument leaned heavily on sentiment. My client is remorseful, she said. She's already lost everything. Her husband, her home, her reputation. Punishment has been served in other ways. Mercy, too, has a place in justice. But the judge's expression remained unreadable. The court adjourned for deliberation. We waited in silence. Vivian sat still, staring at her folded hands. I watched the clock tick through endless minutes until finally the bailiff returned. All rise. The judge entered, papers in hand. After reviewing the evidence and testimony, she began. This court finds in favor of the plaintiffs, Otis and Vivian Morgan, damages awarded in the amount of $1,650,000 plus legal costs and interest. Della's shoulders sagged. Her attorney whispered something in her ear, but she didn't move. Vivian closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. I reached for her hand under the table. The gavel struck once. The trial was over. Outside, reporters swarmed. Microphones extended. Voices shouting questions. Mr. Morgan, Mrs. Morgan, how do you feel about the verdict? Walker shielded us, steering us toward the exit. No comments, he said firmly. We'll issue a statement through counsel. We reached the car before anyone could press closer. Vivian buckled her seatbelt, staring out the window at the courthouse steps. It's finished, she whispered. Almost, I said. She still faces criminal sentencing next month. Vivian nodded, her voice barely audible. I don't need vengeance. I just need peace. That night we ate dinner in silence. The house felt both lighter and emptier. After dishes were cleared, Vivian went to bed early. I stayed in the living room, staring at the framed family photos still on the shelves. Birthday parties, holidays, vacations. Della smiling in every one. I gathered them one by one, placed them in a box, and carried it to the attic. When I came back down, the walls looked bare, but the air felt clearer. The next morning, I found a voicemail on my phone. Unknown number. I pressed play. Dad, it's me. Della's voice trembled slightly. I just wanted to say I'm sorry again. I know you hate me, but I wanted you to know I'm not fighting the sentence anymore. I'll accept whatever happens. Please tell Mom I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to hear it. I listened twice, then deleted it. Weeks passed. August arrived heavy with heat and rain. Vivian slowly regained strength. Short walks around the neighborhood, afternoons reading on the porch, phone calls with friends who had finally returned after the verdict. Sometimes, though, she'd fall silent mid-conversation, her eyes distant. I keep hearing her voice, she said once. When she was little, when she used to run through the sprinklers laughing. I knew the feeling. Memory isn't merciful. It never erases, only layers new noise on top. We attended Della's sentencing hearing together. The courtroom was smaller this time, quieter. Della stood alone at the defense table. Curtis wasn't there, already serving his sentence. The judge reviewed the case file, the plea agreement, the evidence. The court finds the defendant, Della Richards, guilty of conspiracy to commit attempted murder, he said. Given the circumstances and the defendant's lack of prior record, but in light of the deliberate nature of the crime, the sentence is set at 12 years in state prison, with eligibility for parole after 9. Della didn't speak. She only nodded once, eyes glassy but dry. As she was led away in handcuffs, she turned her head briefly toward us. For a moment, her gaze met Vivian's. Then she looked down and kept walking. Vivian's hand tightened on mine. "That's the last time I'll see her," she said. I didn't answer. After the sentencing, we drove to the lake outside Tampa, where we used to take family picnics years ago. The water shimmered under late afternoon light, the air thick with humidity and the scent of pine. We sat on a bench overlooking the water. Vivian broke the silence first. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "if we could have done something different, raised her differently?" "All the time," I said. "And do you think it would have mattered?" I stared at the horizon where the sky met the water. "No," I said finally. "Some choices belong only to the person who makes them." Vivian nodded slowly. "I still love her," she said. "I probably always will, but I can't forgive her." "That's enough," I said. "You don't have to forgive to heal." Weeks turned into months. Autumn came late to Florida, bringing slightly cooler air and softer light. Vivian began painting again. Watercolors of still lakes, pale skies, and the faint suggestion of movement. I returned to volunteer work at the courthouse, mentoring young public defenders. They knew the headlines, but they treated me with quiet respect, no awkward questions. Every so often, letters arrived from the prison, Della's handwriting, sometimes just a paragraph, sometimes pages. We never opened them. Walker kept them sealed in a file marked correspondence, not read. One evening, as I was locking up my office, Vivian came in holding a small envelope. "This one's different," she said. "It's from Curtis." I hesitated. "Do you want to know what it says?" She shook her head. "No, I just wanted to hand it to you." I slid it into the same file and closed the drawer. In November, we received a letter from the state attorney's office. It was procedural. Confirmation that both convicts were serving their terms without incident. Restitution payments scheduled to begin from prison wages. The total would barely cover a fraction of the judgment, but it wasn't about money anymore. Vivian read the letter, then placed it back in the envelope. "So that's it," she said. "It's really over." "As over as it can be," I said. That night we sat outside, watching the sun sink behind the trees. The cicadas hummed, and the air smelled faintly of rain. "Do you think she'll ever understand what she did?" Vivian asked. "I don't know," I said. "But understanding doesn't always come with freedom." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You know, Otis, I think we survived something most people couldn't." I looked at her, frail but strong, her eyes filled with the kind of peace that comes only after enduring everything. "Yes," I said, "we did." 2 weeks before Christmas, Marcus Webb stopped by for coffee. He handed me a folder thick with final paperwork. Closure documents from the civil case, the lien against Della's property, the satisfaction of judgment notice. "It's all wrapped up," he said. "Legally and financially, there's nothing left to do." "Good," I said. He sipped his coffee, studied me. "You know, Otis, most people in your position would have walked away, but you saw it through." "I didn't have a choice," I said. "If I'd stopped halfway, it would have been like saying her life didn't matter." Marcus nodded. "Still, you did what you had to, and you did it cleanly. No shortcuts, no revenge, just justice. That's the only way it means something," I said. He smiled faintly, stood, and clasped my shoulder. "Merry Christmas, my friend." After he left, I went upstairs to check on Vivian. She was sitting at her easel, painting the lake again, the same one from that day after the sentencing. This time, though, the sky in the picture was lighter, streaked with soft gold. When she saw me, she smiled. "Almost done," she said. "It's beautiful," I told her. She dipped her brush, added a final stroke. "It's called Survived." January came quietly. The holidays passed without ceremony. No tree, no lights, no gatherings. Just the two of us, the hum of the heater, and the soft crackle of rain against the windows. Vivian spent her mornings painting, her afternoons tending to the small garden behind the house. The herbs she planted months earlier had somehow survived the winter chill. Basil, mint, rosemary, all thriving despite the odds. One afternoon, while she was pruning the plants, I received a call from the state prison liaison. The officer's tone was formal but gentle. "Mr. Morgan, this is Officer Pennington from the Department of Corrections. I wanted to inform you that inmate Curtis Richards was transferred to the hospital wing earlier this week. Complications from an infection. He passed away this morning." I stood there, hand gripping the receiver. "Does Della know?" "She's been notified. She's currently under supervision." but requested that we tell you as well. She said you should hear it from us first. Thank you, I said, and hung up. When I told Vivian, she didn't speak for a long time. She kept trimming the basil until the scent filled the air. Then she said, he chose his path. I hope he found peace at the end. Her words carried no anger, just quiet resignation. A week later, a letter arrived from the prison, postmarked 2 days before Curtis died. It was addressed to both of us. Vivian hesitated when she saw it. Maybe we should read this one, she said softly. We opened it together at the kitchen table. Curtis's handwriting was uneven, shaky. Mr. and Mrs. Morgan, I know nothing I write can make things right. I've had a lot of time to think, and I realized I spent my life taking shortcuts. Gambling, lying, pretending I could fix things with half-truths. Della and I made choices we can't undo. And she said it was the only way, and I went along because I was weak. That's not an excuse, just the truth. Your daughter isn't evil. She's lost. She thought money could buy her freedom. I helped her believe that. I wish I could take back what we did, but I can't. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. For everything. Curtis. We sat there for a long time after reading it. Vivian folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. He was right about one thing, she said quietly. You can't undo choices, I nodded. But you can stop them from repeating. Spring came early that year. The lake near our home filled with sunlight, the air thick with the hum of insects and the smell of wet earth. Vivian's strength returned. She began volunteering at the community center, helping with art classes for children. I started teaching part-time again. Guest lectures at the university, mostly about legal ethics. Whenever students asked about moral grey areas, I thought of Della, of how small compromises, justified in the name of survival, can lead to devastation. One afternoon, after a lecture, a young woman approached me. Mr. Morgan, she said, I read about your case. My brother went through something similar. Family betrayal, manipulation, everything. But you handled it with dignity. How did you manage that? I thought for a long moment. Anger burns fast, I said finally. But discipline lasts. Justice isn't about emotion, it's about order. You can't build anything on rage. You can only build on truth, she nodded, eyes bright. Thank you, sir. In late April, we received another letter from the prison. This one was from Della. It came through Walker's office, as always, opened for review before delivery. He called first. Do you want me to send it through? I hesitated, then said, yes. When it arrived, I placed it on the dining table. Vivian and I sat together again, the same way we had with Curtis's. She gave a small nod. Let's read it. I unfolded the pages. Mom, Dad, Curtis is gone. I heard yesterday. I cried, but not just for him, for everything. For who I used to be, for what I became. I think about you both every day. I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't blame you. I've spent the last year trying to understand why I did what I did, and the truth is, I don't even know. I thought I could control life the way I managed money, bend it until it worked. But people aren't accounts you can balance. I don't expect you to write back. I just wanted to tell you I'm alive, and that I finally understand what I destroyed. I see Mom's face every night. I hear her voice. It never stops. I don't want it to. It's the only way I know she's still with me. I'm sorry, and I love you, even if you never speak to me again. Della, when I finished reading, I didn't speak. The words hung between us like fog. Vivian wiped her eyes. Do you think she means it? I think she finally realizes the weight of what she's done, I said. Whether that's remorse or regret, I don't know. Vivian nodded slowly. Maybe that's enough. She took the letter, folded it, and placed it in the same file as the others, marked correspondence, closed. The years moved quietly after that. Vivian's health improved, her laughter returned, and our days became ordinary again. The kind of ordinary we used to take for granted. Breakfast on the porch, grocery runs, evening walks. Every now and then, someone would recognize me from the old news stories, usually at the courthouse or the grocery store. You're that prosecutor, right? The one whose daughter... They never finished the sentence. I'd nod politely, and they'd look embarrassed. But I didn't mind anymore. The past was no longer an open wound. It was a scar. Visible, permanent, but no longer painful to touch. One night, near the end of summer, Vivian and I sat outside watching the sky darken. Fireflies winked in the garden, and the air was soft and heavy with the smell of jasmine. I was thinking, she said, about forgiveness. I turned to her. Yes, she smiled faintly. Maybe forgiveness isn't about them. Maybe it's about freeing ourselves from the weight of what they did. I thought about that for a long moment. Do you forgive her? I'm learning to, she said. A little more every day. She looked at me. Do you? I stared at the stars, remembering the years of pain, the nights in the hospital, the courtroom battles, the letters, the silence. Not yet, I said softly, but maybe someday. In October, on Vivian's birthday, we drove back to the lake. She brought her sketchbook. I brought coffee. The air was crisp, the water still. She set her easel near the shore and began painting while I watched the reflection of clouds ripple across the surface. After a while, she said, "Do you ever wonder what happens when this is all behind us? When we're gone, and all that's left are the stories people tell?" I used to, I said. Now I think it doesn't matter. What matters is how we lived through it. She smiled. Then we lived well in the end. I reached over and took her hand. Yes, I said. We did. Months later, near the start of spring, I received one last letter from the prison administration. It was brief, just a single paragraph informing me that inmate Della Richards had been transferred to a minimum security facility for rehabilitation programs. She had earned early release consideration based on good behavior and participation in counseling. I read the letter twice, then folded it and placed it back in the envelope. Vivian found me standing by the window, the paper still in my hand. What is it? She's being moved, I said. Early release review. Vivian thought for a moment, then said, let her live with what she's learned. I nodded. That's punishment enough. We didn't talk about it again. Years passed quietly after that. Vivian's hair turned silver. My own steps grew slower. The garden flourished every spring. Herbs, flowers, small bursts of life reclaiming the soil that had once seemed so barren. On her 74th birthday, she finished another painting of the lake, sunlight breaking through clouds, the water rippling with gold. She signed her name in the corner and hung it in the living room. That's my last one, she said, smiling. Everything I needed to say is in there. When I looked at it, I saw not just water and sky, but time itself, pain, forgiveness, and the fragile peace that follows both. Years later, after Vivian passed away quietly in her sleep, I found myself standing alone at that same lake. The wind was gentle, the water calm. I carried one of her paintbrushes in my hand. Its bristles stiff with dried colour, I whispered into the air. We survived. And I meant it, because survival isn't about the absence of pain. It's about living through it, carrying it, and still choosing to keep moving forward. And that's how everything ended. Otis finally got justice for what happened, and Vivian lived the rest of her life in peace. Their story wasn't about revenge. It was about standing up for what's right, no matter how hard it gets. Sometimes life teaches lessons in the most painful way, but at least they survived it. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more such stories. Thanks for watching.